Hello and welcome back. I hope you enjoyed building the alpha blog and were able to set up the home and about pages for your blog application. Now, I'm going to go ahead and start the server and look at mine. So I'll navigate over to my app. Okay, and to run the server, rails s-p. All right, now if I click on preview, now notice how the default page still shows this Rails welcome message, okay? I don't like that. This is the root page and we have to change this. Right now, to go to my pages, I have to go to pages, home, to go to my home page, and pages about to go to my about page. What I want to do is I want to have this link go to the home page and then the /about go to the about page, which right now doesn't work. So how do I do that? To do that, I have to update my routes. So navigate over to your routes file in your config, routes.rb. Over here, first, I'm going to set the home page to be the root route. How do I do that? Over here, change this get to root, okay? So root, and then you can just remove all of this. Simply say root, go to pages home. So let's see what that did. Over here, if I go to the root route now, okay, there's the home page. If I click on about, it doesn't go to the about page because there is a problem with the home page link, and we'll fix that in a second. So how do I make the access to the about page to be simply /about instead of /pages/about? To do that, you can simply say get about to pages about. Let's see what that does. If I go here, actually this link won't work because I have an error with my home page path in the about page. So let's fix that real quick. If I go to my about page, link to home is no longer pages home path because I just switched it to root. So what should be the path? Let's check it out. I'm going to open a new terminal. If I type in rake routes, there's the route for my home page. It's now root path, okay? So over here, what I'll do is change this to root path. Save that and check out my about path. Now /about goes to pages about and the prefix should be about_path. And that happened because of this line right here, get about to pages about. All right, so let me update that in the home page. So link to about is no longer pages about path, it's simply about path. So save that. Over here, if I reload this page, there's no longer a pages about page. If I simply type in about, there's my about page. Now if I click on home, I'm back to my home page. Notice how there's no appending of the /home or /pages home required. This is the root route. Okay, so now I have a root route for my application and the routes are how I want them to be for the about page as well. Now back to our application. So I'm going to shut down the Rails server because I don't need it right now. All right, let me clear this up. So before we move forward, we have to talk about something that's very important in any kind of development, and that's version control. Currently, we're just coding away without any backup of our code. So if we make a mistake, there's no way of going back to a previous version of the app if we break something badly. So we need to put this app in version control. What version control does is every time you make a commit or save your changes, It copies how your app looks at the time. So if you have changes you've made that you want to undo or get rid of, you can easily do that. And what we'll use for version control is Git. Git is a very popular version control system. You can read up on Git by going to git-scm.com, and it has a whole bunch of information on Git and version control with it. Okay, if you go to documentation, you can see that there's an online version of this book that you can read for free, and it walks you through version control, history of Git, some basics, installing Git, which you don't need because your Nitrous environment comes with Git already installed, and a few other things. So when you have a couple of hours, I would recommend just reading up on Git and version control in general. Another good reference is gitref.org, and this has some very good commands that you can use in Git, like to get started, how to clone, etc., etc. There's a lot of stuff over here and information that's useful. If you just click on reference, it just goes through some of the things you can do with pretty good illustrations also. Okay, another resource is if you go to YouTube and type in version control with Git, all these videos show up. For those of you who would prefer to just view a video on Git to get comfortable with it, you can do this as well. All right, now back to our application. Now before we get started using Git, we have to set up a couple of configuration items, and you only have to do this once. Okay, so the first thing, to ensure that you have Git installed, you can type in git -- version. Okay, and you can see that it's Git version 1.9.1. Okay, so the setup item, the first item is git config -- global space user.name, and enter in your name over here. So I'm going to say, and then the second item is git space config space -- global space user.email. Okay, and hit enter. Okay, so these two items, that's what's displayed on any public repository that you're going to have later on. All right, now that's it for setup. Now to see what you have set up so far, you can type in git config and hit enter. And then it gives you all of the usage. So if I type in git config space -- list, it'll show you all of the settings so far. So here's the name and the email that I've just set up. Okay, so we're ready to get started with Git. So the first step is we want to track all the files in our Alpha Blog application. Okay, we want to start tracking them. How do we do that? First, we initialize a Git repository for our application. To do that, within the app itself, type in git space init. Okay, so it initializes an empty Git repository. It's still not tracking any of our files or folders. It just created an empty Git repository. To track all our files, you can type in git add, so git space add space -A. Hit enter. Now it's tracking all our files. How do we test that? You can type in git space status, hit enter. Notice how all of these files are now being tracked. Okay, now they're being tracked, but I have not made a commit as yet. So this hasn't been saved. It's just telling me that it's tracking these files. Now to save the application, or basically make a commit of our code as it stands right now, what we have to do is type in git space commit space -m, which stands for a message, space, and within quotes, put in a message. So I'm going to say create Rails application and set up home and about pages. Okay, so that's my initial commit. Usually, when you start an application, you basically set up the Git repo for it and do an initial commit of saying start Rails application or initial commit or something like that. We went a few steps ahead, but that's fine. So we're going to make a commit right now. Hit enter. Okay. So now our application code is saved in our Git repository. Now next, I want to show you a file, which isn't going to show up over here. It's actually hidden. If you click on this over here under settings and then click on show hidden files, you'll see this file in your application. It's the git ignore file. Okay. Now here, basically any files or folders that you don't want tracked by Git need to be entered here. So notice how it's not going to track bundler configuration, which is great. It's not going to track any of your SQLite files, which is good because your Rails application is independent of the database that you use. And then it's going to ignore log files and temp files. So this is good for start, but if you need to ignore anything, you can add them here. This is a git ignore file. So I'm going to hide hidden files again. Now let's take a look at what Git can do, or how Git is useful. Obviously there are a lot of uses and a lot of advanced things you can do with Git. Let's take a look at a basic use of it. Okay, so let's say I'm in my folder and I accidentally delete something. Let's say I accidentally delete my config folder. All right, so how do I do that? rm-rf space config. Hit enter. Notice how my config directory is gone, which means I don't have any routes. It's pretty bad because my application is not going to run anymore because I just broke it. Let me go run the server, Rails server-b. Spring was unable to find config application.rb file, right? So my entire config directory is gone. So how do I undo this? With Git, this is very simple. Type in git status and you see that I've deleted all of these files because I've gotten rid of my config directory. Application RB is gone, boot RB is gone, all of these, including routes, everything's gone. To undo this change and not commit my changes, I simply type in git checkout -f. Hit enter. Notice what happened. My config directory just came back. So the change that I accidentally made has been undone and my application's no longer broken. And I can test that out by starting my server. If I go to preview, actually preview's already here. Let me just reload this page. Notice how it's working, right? And that's just a simple demo of what you can do with Git. I'm going to shut down the server. All right. Now the next thing is your code is here, right? This is your local development environment. What if you wanted to share your code with your coworkers, other developers, or friends, or someone you're working with, right? How do you do that? How do you back up your code so you can basically download it anywhere instead of having it just here? What you'll need is a code repository, all right? And the two most popular ones for code repositories are GitHub. This is one, by far one of the most popular. And the other one is Bitbucket. Okay, so bitbucket.org. For this course, we're going to use GitHub. But if you have either GitHub or Bitbucket accounts and you've used them before, then feel free to use whichever one you're comfortable with. But for the course, we're going to use GitHub. Now, if you already have a GitHub account, that's great. But if you don't, in preparation for the next video and going forward, I want you to go to this site, github.com, and sign up for an account. Okay, you can simply sign up by filling this in or clicking on this sign up button and sign up for a free account. Now it'll ask you for an email address. Make sure you enter in a valid email address here because it'll send you an activation link and you would need that to activate your GitHub account. Okay, great. Now in the next video, we'll take steps to make our first push of our code from our development environment to our GitHub account so we have an online repository for our application code. All right? So good luck, and I'll see you in the next video.